here we go.
Good morning, everyone. The title of Angelica's talk today is Boldly Living a New Story, and that reminded me of living out loud for some reason. So I have a writing from Mark Nepo that was in the Book of Awakening. And so I'm just going to ask you to get comfortable as we go into this contemplative period, followed by a minute of silence, and then Jackson will sing us into the invocation. So if you'll just get, as I said, comfortable in your chair, close your eyes if that feels right for you. Take a couple of breaths and drop down into your center where you know that you know the truth of who you are. The story of a young divinity student who was stricken with polio, and from somewhere deep within him came an unlikely voice calling him to, of all things, dance. So with great difficulty, he quit divinity school and began to dance. And slowly and miraculously, he not only gained the use of his legs, but went on to become one of the fathers of modern dance. This is the story of Ted Shawn, and it is compelling for us to realize that studying God did not heal him. Embodying God did. This leads us all to the inescapable act of living out what is kept in, of daring to breathe in muscle and bone what we know and feel and breathe again and again.
Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know.
And I know that we are all God. I know that we have within us the spark of the divine, the spark of spirit of the universe, the stardust that we come from. And I know that as we embody this truth, as we live out loud the truth of who we are, we not only inspire others to do the same, but we inspire ourselves to reach even further, higher, greater. And so I simply breathe into this truth, knowing that we are here this Sunday to celebrate who we are individually, who we are as a group, and who we are as a community. And as we breathe into every bone, every muscle, our heart and our mind, the truth that we are divine, that we have everything we need right within us right now. We do step out, we live boldly, we live purposely, and we live truthfully. And so I simply let this gathering unfold in its right and perfect way, knowing that each one of us will find some kernel of truth, some kernel of inspiration to take with us, to nurture, to flame, to fan the flame, and to be even more embodiment of the divine. And so it is.
Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know.
Thank you, Jackson. And now I will turn it over to Angelica.
Thank you, Jackson and Susan. So, as you've heard already, my talk is entitled Boldly Living a New Story. And, you know, we've talked before about that there isn't going to be anything normal as we move out into moving out of shelter in place, etc., that things are going to be different. And we have the opportunity to make them even better than what we remember from before the last year. And so this idea of boldly living a new story really caught on to me. So the first thing, though, I want to mention is, is we have to look at the stories we've told ourselves before. So what stories about our individual and collective past do we continue to tell that we know are not the most life-affirming stories? And we probably, if we stop and think about it, we probably each have at least one story that we've brought with us, maybe from childhood. You know, the story of mine that comes to me is, you know, I remember a few years ago talking to somebody and saying, well, I've always been a shy person. And they looked at me kind of surprised, like, what? And then I realized, wait a minute, that was me as a child. A story that I developed about myself as a child, and that wasn't true any longer. And so think about that for a moment. What story do you have that you've been holding on to for a long time that isn't the most life-affirming story? And what if this Sunday we committed to changing the narrative? So imagine being so bold as to truly embody principle as the author, not the precedent. What if you really could change your life today in this few short minutes that we have together? Well, I know that you can. We can. But let's look at those stories. I've used this slide before. I just love it. So Perspective 101. Something happens. In the larger perspective, it means nothing. But we make up a story about what it means. And the story that we make up creates our reality. It creates our world. It creates what's possible and not possible. So let's think about this for a minute. So something happens. Let's say you're standing in a store line and you notice that there's a couple people in front of you and they look at you and then they turn and whisper to each other. And so maybe that absolutely means nothing about you. But we make up a story about what it really means. We might think, oh, well, they don't like what I have on, or maybe they think that I'm fat, or, we make up some story, and the stories that we make up are usually negative. They're not, oh, they must think I'm pretty, or maybe they recognize me from somewhere, or whatever. We tend to make up stories that are negative. And so then that story creates our reality. And so we go through the line, maybe even the rest of the day, thinking that there's something wrong with us because two people looked at you and then turned away and whispered to each other. And maybe that colors your whole world. So I really want us to think about this as we're going through our lives. that not everything that happens is about us. Some things we just observe. And yes, back, if you go way down deep, it's something that we've projected out there. But again, we're making up stories about what life means. So, whenever our lives change, whether it's starting a new job or business or trying to change a habit or leave something or even burning the breakfast toast, we tell ourselves a story about it. We might be the hero, the victim, the wrongdoer, the innocent bystander, or the observer of our story. And in many of our stories, I've noticed that as I've been working on this, thinking about this talk this week, that in many of my stories, I want to be the hero. But more often, I cast myself as the victim. And it is time for these types of stories to change. Absolutely time. So Neil Donald Walsh wrote in one of his books, past data should not be the basis of present truth. Data from a prior time should always and only be the basis for new questions. I like that idea. That what happened in the past doesn't need to be the present truth of today. So, but it can help us to ask ourselves questions as to why we might have thought that way or how we could think differently. And then, of course, there's the famous line by Thomas Trord, principle is not bound by precedent, which basically means that just because something happened in the past, it doesn't mean it's going to happen in the future. It's not going to happen in the present. It's really all about what we're thinking and what we're projecting with our emotions. So boldly living a new story means we have to give up a lot of what we've been telling ourselves. And yet, if we give up our attachments, our beliefs, and control of our stories, then who are we? For all these years, I've created stories around myself that make up who I am. And if I let all those go, then who am I really? And not only that, but how do we create something new? And that's what today is about. To boldly go where no one has gone before. For those of you who like Star Trek, I know that this phrase has been imprinted in your mind and on your heart. Actually, it first said where no man has gone before. But I finally found a picture that said where no one has gone before, because it's about all of us. But to boldly go. And you know where I think that boldly go is, and why I call it where no one has gone before, is because that where we're really journeying is to our higher self. To understand that who we are is not just this, let's see, Q called us an ugly bag of flesh and water, or something like that on Star Trek. Who we are is not just this body. Who we are is really the spirit within us, that each one of us is an individualized expression of God, of this energy that is everything, absolutely everything. And Raymond Charles Barker says in The Power of Decision, all creation starts with a desire. God desired self-expression and the cosmos was born. The desires of your heart are the possibilities that can be manifested in your experience. And so here's where we start. We start with a desire. What do we desire this new world that we're stepping out into to look like? You know, when I think about it, I think I want to live in a world that's full of compassion, a world that's full of peace, a world that where everybody can have an education, a world where there's plenty of food, a world where there's no road rage or this anger that seems to be popping up all over the place right now. And I was meditating about that, the fact that so much anger seems to be popping up all over the place. And I remembered, again, what I've mentioned before, that it always seems to get worse before it gets better. That is one of my beliefs, unfortunately, and a belief I want to change. But it does seem like that when we're moving into a higher level of consciousness, which I think everybody on the planet is doing, then we need to, everything that is unlike what we want it to be fights to stay alive. I've talked to you before about the idea, the old idea with the patriarchy is that might is right. And we're moving more into the divine feminine. And in the feminine, it's more about kindness and compassion. I mean, the Dalai Lama was talking about this, 8 years ago or so. And slowly, I think that all of us are moving into this place where we no longer think that might is right, and we're working toward a level of kindness that is higher than we've ever experienced before. In fact, I want to recommend to you a TV show on Netflix called The Kindness Diaries. And it's a wonderful show. This young man goes all over the world and finds these wonderful examples of kindness and then does some kindness. And it's, if we focus on those things that we desire, then these are the possibilities, as Raymond Charles Barker says, that can be manifested in our experience. So if your idea of our new world being compassionate and kind, etc., don't watch horror films or don't focus on things that are what we would call negative. Start really looking at this fact that if we are indeed co-creators in this universe and we want to create something better, then we have to let go of those old stories. Our personal stories, the collective stories, and move them into a higher realm. Ernest Holmes, in this thing called You, wrote, "Today you are going to take your life in your own hands, realizing that God is ever with you." And this is how we do it, is realizing that this idea that God is ever with us is true. It's true because if God is absolutely everything in the universe, if there is no spot where God is not, and all those little phrases that we know so well, then this too, this is God. It's an expression, a unique, individualized expression of this one divine energy that is the source and substance of absolutely everything that there is. And so remembering the truth of our being is so important right now as we take our lives into our own hands, as we take control of what we choose to experience in the next years of our life. And as we do it, we set up a radiation field, an energy field that moves out and touches unknown numbers of people. And perhaps they start feeling this truth that God is absolutely everywhere. And they feel kinder and more compassionate. So we're doing it for ourselves, but we're also doing it for the whole. And I think that when I got that a long time ago, that everything I do has an effect on my reality, that's when I started realizing to really trust the divine. To, as Greg Lavoie was saying last week, this idea of trusting the divine, I think we talk about it, but do we really do it? And here's another place where we can boldly go where no one has gone before. Is trusting the universe, that it is a loving place, that it is a kind place, a compassionate place. And realizing that that energy that we just talked about, this energy that is the source and substance of absolutely everything that we call God, because who knows what to name it, if it has a name, it's greater than anything we could possibly ever imagine, because it's all things. If that thing is love, then one of the things we're doing as we realize that this presence is within us, is expressing as us, is that we move back into our hearts. We move from the head, or we use the head and the heart together. I remember a friend of mine, Nancy Shipley Rubin, was doing a talk at, I think it was at the Baltimore church one time, and she talked about how the heart is the temple, the gut is the kitchen, and the head is the library. And that it takes energy from the library, bringing it down into the temple to create the workings of our life, to create the kitchen, the steam from the kitchen to work, which then, of course, rises back up again. At the time, I thought it was an interesting idea. And so let's do this week. Let's allow ourselves to really pay more attention to the truth of our being. I mean, if we really understood, if we really felt that absolutely everything was divine, everything was made out of the energy of love, then we would be in awe all the time. We would be in awe like we are when we hear a bird sing in the early morning hours, or when I go outside and I look at my rose bushes and see the abundance of flowers, or when one of our animals wants to sit in our lap, or a cat starts purring, or a baby starts, cooing. There's the divine energy in absolutely everything. And so this week, allow yourself to really look at what you desire. What do you desire your life to look like as we open up the world? And what do you desire the collective consciousness to experience as we open up the world? The desires of your heart are the possibilities that can be manifested in our experiences. So let's say this affirmation together. I step out into the newness of each and every day, knowing that the love and peace of spirit accompanies me. And let's go into treatment. How grateful I am that the love and peace of spirit accompanies me, is everything, all the time. How grateful I am to know and to remember that there is only one life. That life is God's life, and that life is the life we are living right now. So I declare for each one of us in the first person that I am ready and willing to boldly go where I have never been before. I am willing to step up, step out, and experience myself in a whole new way. I recognize that who I am is a unique, individualized expression of the One. And so now I start acting like it. I let go of all of my stories, my poor little old me stories, or my victim stories, my stories of being put upon. I let go of all of that, and I know the truth. The truth is, I am co-creating this life. And so I choose to co-create it in love. And if I think I don't know what love is, I now allow myself to experience love in a totally different way. And I know the universe will give me plenty of experiences to show me how much I am loved, to show me how much I am love. And I remember it's in Scripture when God says, "This is my beloved in whom I am well pleased." And I hear the universe saying that to us at all times. You are my beloved in whom I am well pleased. And so I know we stand proudly. We acknowledge that we are the beloved. And we let ourselves be the vehicle for divine love out into the world. We live with compassionate hearts. We act kindly. We let go and let God express itself more fully and freely as us than we ever have before. We boldly step into this new consciousness, knowing that as we do so, we lift up humanity. And how grateful I am that we are learning this, or we are remembering this. How grateful I am to know that Spirit has our back. Spirit is our back. Spirit is our whole body. Spirit is absolutely everything. And so I rejoice in this truth. I boldly rejoice in this truth. And I release these words into divine law, knowing that they are already so, knowing that each one of us stands a little bit prouder, loves ourselves a little bit more, because we've been here this morning. And indeed, as we are doing this, I know that we're building a beautiful temple for the divine. And so it is.